My name is Daniel Castro. I'm Vice President of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank based out of Washington, D.C. And I'm really happy to be here at CRSS this week, in Islamabad this week, but CRSS today, to talk about a whole host of issues. But we just got out of this really great roundtable where we were talking about the impact of technology, especially emerging technologies like AI, as well as the internet. And how technology governance affects freedom, democracy, all these core issues that people really care about. And we had a great discussion. Lots of points came up. One of the issues that I think we really focused on was who's in control of this technology. We're seeing the emergence of major new technologies, ChatGPT, but also all these other frontier models. We see these large social networks. We see telecom companies that control access to the internet. And the question is, who's deciding who gets online, who gets access to information, what information is left online, whether there's biases that might influence how we understand the news, what is allowable, what's not, misinformation, all of these really big issues that ultimately affect how people vote, how people perceive their government, whether they trust their government, how they even basically understand the world. And that gets to these core issues of how people relate to the society and relate to the people around them. And so, when we're thinking about AI and the big technologies that are out there that are coming, that are being developed, one question is whose voice is being heard in the development of this technology? Is it being controlled just by for-profit commercial companies that are just looking out for their profits? Is it being controlled by certain large countries? We had a lot of conversations about the geopolitical rivalries between the United States and China, and whether that competition, they're certainly competing to be the winner, but what does that mean for the rest of the world, and how does that affect the rest of the world? And then we also had some conversations about the countries and the regions that are out there creating rules around this technology. So for example, the European Union has created the AI Act. This is a law that's governing not just the use of the technology, but the development of the technology. So it has big implications for the rest of the world. So one of the points that I made is that I think it's important we separate out the role that countries can and should be playing when they're regulating AI. When you're regulating the development of the technology, that's setting rules that affect the whole world. If the United States regulates the development of an AI model that Pakistan is using, that means the United States has put in place rules that Pakistani citizens didn't have a role, a voice in shaping, and that could be a problem. At the same time, obviously, if the US maybe is not doing anything in terms of the regulation of the technology, maybe this technology is being released in ways that are harmful to Pakistan. So there's a responsibility there that has to be balanced. But big picture, long term, I think the real focus should be on allowing countries to focus on regulating the use of these technologies, because different countries have different perceptions about values. They have different perceptions about free speech, where to draw lines on that. They have different ways of representing their own citizens' interests. And so we have to respect the fact that these are sovereign countries, they're going to make their own rules, but at the same time, we have to recognize that there are these technologies are going to have huge implications for individuals. And so the kind of question that we come back to is, where are we going with all of this? How will this technology, first the question was kind of who's going to be shaping it, but how can we shape it in ways that will be useful? We have to recognize that the technology itself is just a tool. AI is a tool. It can be used for good purposes. It can be used for bad purposes. If we have governments that are trying to clamp down on citizens, they're probably going to use AI as part of their arsenal of tools to do that. If we have governments that are trying to empower their citizens, create economic opportunities, encourage free speech, they're probably going to use AI for that purpose too. So the fundamental question, of course, is what kind of society do we want to live in, and that's going to be shaped by the elected officials we have running our society and the government officials we have. But when it comes to the technology, we need to be engaging with those who are developing it. We have to tell them this is how it's impacting us. We need to make our voices heard, and I think there's growing forums to do that. First of all, there's various international institutions that are trying to have dialogues around AI and what it means in different areas, what it means AI for elections, what does AI mean in terms of how it's being used to deliver healthcare and how it might impact different populations one way or another. So we have to engage in those forums where there's going to be a big impact on us personally. For example, AI for education, how it will affect how our students learn in the future. But we also have to think about how do we actually empower all these companies that are building AI tools to build the types of AI tools that we want and that are valuable to us. And the way to do that is by creating high-value data sets that they can use to train their AI models. No company is going to be able to create an AI model, for example, that's useful to me unless data that's about me and my community and people with similar backgrounds to me, if there's data about them, so that when they design these AI models, when they learn from this data, it's relevant to the types of questions that I'll have, that it'll be able to answer the types of questions that I have, and it will deliver answers to other people's questions about me that is fair and accurate. So one of the most important messages I have for policymakers, and that's been part of some of my discussions this past week in Pakistan, is how do we help policymakers understand that it's data-driven innovation, it's technological innovation that leads to economic progress in society. That's what leads to innovation. That's what we need to be investing in for our future. And right now, the technological innovation is around AI, it's around the internet, it's around connectivity, it's around data. And that's what we need to be investing in. We need to make sure that we have the data sets of the future that we need. We need to make sure that we have high-speed connectivity for people. We need to make sure that people aren't blocked from the internet, that they're able to actually get online, get access to the best online services, the best AI models, be able to sell products and services globally, be able to work online, get access to all these remote jobs, and that we're also investing in the computing resources that are going to be needed in the future to make use of AI. It's this investment the government can make. Just like in the past, government had to invest in roads and electricity. We're in a digital economy today. We need to be investing in digital infrastructure. So that's the direction I'm hoping that we're going to see more and more countries go. It's the way to build the future that I think will be enormously prosperous for workers. It's a way to raise not just the overall GDP, but raise the standard of living for everyone by just providing new opportunities. So, had a great discussion here today at CRSS. It was a great group of people, and I hope to have more of these types of conversations in the future. I think there's a lot of concerns that people have about how AI might be used in ways that might be harmful. So, for example, one of the biggest fears is that AI can impact people's jobs. And one of the reasons I think governments are hesitant to embrace AI is they don't want to be seen as the cause of job loss in society. Now, long-term, big picture, AI is going to lead to better, higher-paying jobs, but there will be disruption in the short term. And so one of the questions then that comes up is, what role will governments have in actually setting the future of how AI is being used? Who's developing it? We don't, I think a lot of countries will say, should a company like, an American company just dump this technology on us that's going to have a massive impact on our economy if we don't have a say in that? What say should we have? And right now, I think for the most part, the say is, maybe you block the, you block the app, you block the website, or you do nothing. And I think people want more control. They want to be more involved. And so one way to address that is really thinking through the impact that AI will have on the economy and engaging with those impacts. So for example, people will be less concerned about how AI will impact jobs if there's lots of worker retraining opportunities, if there's lots of opportunities to get more skills, to move to higher paying jobs, if there's a strong social safety network. So if you're out of work for a short period of time, you can actually get maybe government support, insurance, something like that to fill in those gaps. But there's all sorts of issues that come up again and again. There's concerns about how AI might be used to impact elections by spreading misinformation, creating deep fakes. There's concerns about AI and how it can be used for financial fraud. For example, to trick people into wiring money to somebody that they think is their parent or a family member or friend, but it's really an attacker. All of these are, again, these potential negative impacts that a country, especially in the countries in the global south, might be saying, why should we just be the victims of this technology that's being put on us by the global north? Shouldn't we have more of a say in this? And again, I think that's where we need to be having these conversations where countries can be saying, what are specific uses that maybe we don't want to allow in our society? And let's go after that. What are there bad actors in our society that are trying to use this technology to exploit us? And let's make sure that we're policing that type of activity. Are there other types of emerging harms that maybe we didn't see in the past? For example, we've seen that this technology has been used to create explicit images of people without their consent. It's a new type of harm that didn't exist in the past. And law enforcement has to be trained. How do we deal with this type of problem and how do we respond? So I think there's a lot that government can do to empower society, empower itself to respond to the moment, to address the concerns that citizens have. It can also think about really putting the technology to use. So there are opportunities for governments to take especially these open models that they can modify to their own purpose. Take these models, customize them so that, fine-tune them is the technical term, fine-tune them for a domestic context, but also use it for value to the citizens, to use it to improve government services, use it to improve education, use it to improve healthcare. And that's a way to say, we're going to take this technology and we're not going to be, idle people standing by and just kind of either letting the technology pass us by or waiting to see how somebody uses it on us. We're going to be determining our future. I think every country should be doing that. They should be saying, this is how we want to use it, and investing in those opportunities. And when that's being done domestically, people within the country have more say on it because they're able to directly participate in those conversations. They're able to, vote both with their wallets and at the ballot box and say, this is the way we think the technology should be used or not used. And government needs to have more public forums for citizens to express both their concerns and where they see opportunity. Because you also want to see that this technology is really being put to use where it can have the biggest dividends, where it can really help improve people's quality of lives, where it can address problems on the ground that maybe a company in another country isn't thinking about, but somebody here can develop a really powerful solution that actually fixes a problem locally. And so, hopefully those types of conversations will, just like with the internet, you have these global multinational companies that are, creating tools that we all use, but you also have lots of local use that's actually creating the value. That's what we want to see with AI. So just like on Facebook and WhatsApp, the reason it's so valuable is because it's everyone in the local community that's using it. It wouldn't be as valuable if it was just to read content that was produced overseas. It's reading local content. We want to see that with AI. It's going to be produced using local data. It will be fine-tuned using local data, and it will be applied on local data to deliver local value. But the only way to get that is by investing in it. And government can help be an early adopter, pave the way, kind of de-risk the technology so the private sector will use it more, and showcase how it can be valuable. So one big question for most countries is, do we need to develop our own model? Do we need a large language model that's designed explicitly for our purpose, but not only designed for our purpose, but designed by us from the ground up exclusively with our data? And I think there's a divergence of thoughts in terms of how to answer this. Some people will say yes, because that's the only way to have full control. And that is certainly true. The cost of doing that, though, is pretty high. What is so interesting about the fact that we have all these open AI models today is that these are basically companies that are giving tens of millions of dollars worth of free R&D to the world, where anyone can pick it up and use it for their own purpose. So when we talk about fine-tuning these models, it's basically saying, instead of architecting this all the way from the beginning, basically redesigning the wheel, you can take a fully developed vehicle and customize it for your roads. You can change anything you want on it. You can keep what you like. You can do anything you want, but you have this $100 billion vehicle that now you can customize in whatever you want. That's really powerful. That's it's this platform for innovation that gives new opportunities. And I think the only concern that I have as countries proceed down this path, I think as they fine-tune models, is we have to be asking, what's the risk when particularly governments are designing these models? I like the fact that it's not a government-owned internet. I think that's a good thing. If it was a government-owned internet, I think there would be all sorts of additional censorship blockages than what we see today, which still exists, but it's privately owned, so there's a little bit of a hands-off or arm's distance to that type of censorship. With AI, if government was designing it, they would, it's very easy to go from, we're going to design AI that's for our people, to we're going to design AI that's for our people, but also is for those in power. That maybe there are certain things we want to say or don't want to say, or if it says something that's controversial, we're going to be critiqued for it, so we're going to silence anything that might be controversial, even if it's correct. That's one of the risks that emerges in this space. So that's why I think we certainly want to see domestic innovation. I would like to see more of that commercial-led than maybe government-led. And I would also like to see a real focus on building up data sets so that no matter who makes the best AI model, it will be useful in a domestic context. It's this idea of saying you can either build one thing that's perfect for you, or you can create the ingredients so that everyone who's building something will be building something that's also perfect for you. And I think long-term, that's going to be the much more sustainable model to create that kind of data layer that allows everyone to build innovation that's appropriate for the Global South, than to try to continuously invest and be in that cycle of having to build new technology. Because the problem with AI is it's advancing so rapidly. So if you say, I'm going to build an AI model for a particular country, that's not a one-time project. That's a commitment for now until basically the end of the world. And that's a big commitment to ask. And I think, again, the question of sustainability, who's paying for it, I think most countries would be better off saying, you know what, I'll let someone else pay for that. I'll just provide you the information about what I need and let you design it for me. And I think they'll be better off long term. I think end users need to know that AI is fallible, just like other information sources are also fallible. You have to check your sources, you have to be critical. But one of the nice things about AI is it actually can help us do more critical thinking, which is probably the most important skill we need to develop when consuming information. And so not only can we, I think right now we often think about what's the risk when we get information from AI, and that is a risk that we have to think about and be preparing for in the future. Why do we trust this information? Should we trust this information? How might it be manipulated? But we're also going to be still consuming information from all sorts of other sources, whether it's newspapers, social media, television, our friends and family, social media, all of these types of things. And when we receive that information, imagine if we had a super intelligent agent, a friend with us that could help advise us, this information maybe is trustworthy, this information is not. Here's a question maybe you should ask yourself before you believe this information. Not telling us what to think, but helping us be more critical consumers of the information we receive. Imagine what society would look like if we were all as thoughtful as we could be when we're receiving information. To me, that's actually, some of these ways that AI can be incredibly empowering for individuals in ways that maybe we haven't fully appreciated. And I'm not saying this will definitively happen. I'm just saying this is the potential. And we should be looking for those types of potential opportunities and pursuing them, because that's how we improve our society, is by finding those opportunities to make just basically upgrades to how we access information. Again, I would go back to the fact that AI is a tool, and we can use it for all sorts of purposes. We need to be focusing on how can we use it for good, how can we use it in ways that we want, and that has to be something that will come about through, I think, just rigorous conversations in society about what we want out of this, and how we can use it to make ourselves better. And the example I'll just end with here is that if you think about somebody who maybe wants to go on a diet, they want to eat certain things. It's really hard for people to do that long term. People struggle. They'll say, this is what I want to do. I want to eat healthy for the next week, or maybe I want to exercise a certain way. And then they don't do it. The nice thing about technology, and I think AI and all of these things, is it allows us to set our intention and then help hold ourselves accountable to that intention, or guide ourselves on that path we set. So we don't have to, I'm someone who, I see a piece of cake and I want to eat it. And sometimes that's good and sometimes I shouldn't. What's nice is I can decide when I'm fully conscious, when I'm deciding what I want to do, this is what I want to do, and I can use AI to help guide me in those pathways. And think about that in, I'm not talking obviously big picture about eating, but in all sorts of things. Do I want to read more factual information? Do I want to be more inquisitive? I can use AI to help direct me so I do more of these, socially beneficial things, positive things. I can be a better person. And I think, imagine doing that with all of society. Again, allowing people to make their choices about what they want to do and then pursue it. I think that's incredibly powerful. I think for the users of AI, we have to remember what moment we are in the terms of the development of this technology. We're still in the early stages. It is incredibly impressive and powerful when you sit down and you use it. You sometimes think it's magic. And it's not magic, it's not perfect. It is really good, but it still has a lot of flaws. I think when we're thinking about the potential of it, we have to think about where it might be in 10 years, in 15 years, because that's how it's going to radically change society. We have to be preparing now for those changes that we're likely going to see. But in this interim period, where we're using the technology that's still basically beta technology, it's useful, it's incredibly valuable, but it's not perfected by any means. We have to be critical consumers of the technology. We have to be careful about how we're using it. We have to question the results we get from it. For example, one thing that AI is not so great at is doing math. It's getting better. They know this is a known problem and they're doing a lot to fix it. But if you ask it to perform certain calculations for you, you ask it, for example, to tell the difference in time between two time zones, it might get things wrong. One of the things that I found is really interesting using some of these chatbots is you can ask it, are you sure? Or I think you're wrong, and it will actually check its answer. And sometimes you get better results. And so we're starting to see all sorts of techniques to not only help get better answers, check answers, also allow us to independently verify information. So I think we're on the right path. But right now we need to remember the exact moment we're in and not rely too heavily on the technology until it's actually ready for prime time.